Hi everyone. Today I'm doing yet another video surprise on everything wrong with It Happened to Nancy by the late fraud Dr. Beatrice Sparks, who is not a doctor or a doctorate of psychology at all. She was just a total fraud and con artist, one of the worst, greatest literary frauds of the 20th century. I hate this woman so much, and the list is going to cap in at 200 things wrong with this book, and this particular video isn't going to be a compilation anthology like most of my previous videos have been. It's just going to be going over one particular item, which is so egregiously ridiculous it deserves its own in-depth examination. And this is number 171, and I will be going over reading some things from the book as well to particularly illustrate it. So number 171 on my very long list of everything wrong with this flaming pile of horse dung is one of those things that merits its own separate post and video, as I just explained. Absolutely nothing about Nancy and Collin's relationship makes any sense on any level, even if we're considering, oh, it's fiction, it's not supposed to be 100% realistic. But yeah, I know many romance stories and stuff, we understand, oh, that won't necessarily, in real life, probably wouldn't happen, or it's just a little exaggerated. But a good writer gives us a reason to go along with it, even if we know deep down, okay, these people probably wouldn't fall passionately in love just because from one meeting at a resort and they can't stop thinking about one another, and they want to get back together 20 years later and the spark never died and all the time, for example. At least give us a reason to believe something that's kind of verging into fictional territory, instead of just acting like, oh, this is completely realistic from the jump. It's not supposed to be like fairy tale fantasy at all. And so anyway, before I got on that tangent, and the date rape it culminates in to be the subject of another post and video, likewise seems more like a lazy trope to give Nancy AIDS instead of a realistic situation. It's just this woman claimed to be a psychologist, yet she didn't understand anything about actual clinical or adolescent or anything related to any kind of psychology. She just, oh, this is what happens in Mormonism, and I'm writing good Molly Mormon propaganda so you can all these teens can be good little Molly Mormons and Peter priesthoods themselves. I don't really keep up to date with actual psychology or mental anything. She just made it up as she went along, and that's really offensive to me, particularly because at one point in the past I was seriously thinking about being, a child or a school psychologist myself. Obviously, that's a more complicated off-topic thing for its whole other video. So getting into the specifics, what the hell kind of security does this concert have if people can just randomly wander in midway and try to claim occupied seats as theirs? And as I mentioned in a previous video and blog post, I was curious. I looked up to see, oh, where was Garth Brooks playing on that date, April 14th, according to the perpetual calendar, matching with the days of the month and the days of the week. When I looked this up, and when I in 1994, because I was that kind of weird kid who just had to know, and so it seemed to suggest the story took place from 1990 to 1992. But because Dr. Fraud, she messed up her dates and times so many times in pretty much all of her books, okay, maybe she made another mistake, and it really began in 1991 and ended in 1993, because she did begin pitching the book and querying and stuff in 1993. So maybe the old crank just made yet another mistake. But Garth Brooks did not play any concerts in any state on April 14th of either 1990 or 1991. So that was just a really, I know this was pre-internet, but that's just a really big, embarrassing, huge mistake to make. It took me less than 5 minutes to Google Garth Brooks concert tour dates 1990, and there it was. And in his first year of really giving concerts, and he was not playing anywhere, even within those few, within 10 days, a week or whatever, he was not playing any concerts anywhere. So again, this concert never really happened, although I guess her defenders would say, oh, it's not really Garth Brooks. She just made that detail up to change identifying information. It was really like whoever else might have been playing. But no, that's a lazy cop-out. You don't get to like use an actual name and then say, oh, it wasn't really that person's name. It was really a different person or just a completely different event, and you just made it into a Garth Brooks concert. Sorry, that's just not how like writing works. You can't just do like real events and say, oh, but it's not meant to be believed. It's such that's a whole rant for a whole other topic when people say, oh, historical fiction isn't supposed to be accurate. It's just supposed to be a feel good like fairy tale and like a morality play or whatever, or it's looking back on the past, it's not really depicting the past, then don't set your story in the past or use identifiable details that can be debunked. And so anyway, we already established this concert didn't take place, and now we are establishing what kind of security does it have if people just like start wandering in. Oh, those are really our seats. And Nancy describes them as rednecks because apparently she loves the South, but she doesn't really like anything about the South. And I know like redneck is a kind of a, I wouldn't say like racist necessarily. I don't know if there's like a ism word for like anti-geography, like where a person is from, but definitely like redneck is very much an anti-Southern like, stereotype. And she's saying, oh, I hate all Southern food just a few pages later. And how does a scuffle in the row in front of Nancy affect her group? I just can't figure out how that works. Are we supposed to believe this was a chain effect, free-for-all brawl like on classic Springer episodes like Viewers Battle the Clan and Clan Frontation? I have so many happy memories of watching Jerry Springer when I was a teenager and in my 20s, and even now in my 40s, I love watching the old episodes and clips of episodes on YouTube. I would pay good money for a box set. I just, so many wonderful like memories of watching him over the years. Rest in peace, Jerry. I was so sad when I found out he had, passed away fairly recently. If the fight was confined to the row in front of them, why would Elle's Aunt Pauline try to herd them away from it? I've only ever been to one real concert back in 1987 when the Monkees were playing in SPAC or something, one of the concert halls near Albany, New York. But I'm pretty sure you can't just randomly come and go in a packed arena. And how do cops come out of nowhere for a little scuffle and proceed to surround the area? Maybe Dr. Fraud really was thinking about the awesome fights on the classic Springer years, and I'm aware like some of those brawling episodes hadn't really become a thing yet by the time she was probably writing this, but there were definitely like fights on other talk shows and other things, and maybe the fights were, I guess, already starting by 93 when she was like starting to write this crap, so who knows. How does Nancy randomly fall down? Like there's nothing to indicate someone was like getting close to her and knocking her down or whatever. Why doesn't anyone see her falling, least of all her friends and Aunt Pauline? How are people almost walking on her? Like, where did they come from? Like, is this like really a free-for-all Springer brawl we're talking about? Does this arena have festival seating? And are people pouring in halfway through the show? This scenario feels like the tragic Who concert disaster in Cincinnati in 1979, which was like shortly before I was born. It's scary to like think about how close to my lifetime that like, horrible event was, but only inside instead of outside. Like seriously, and if you don't know, 11 concert goers, they were very tragically crushed to death because it's a whole long story. I guess I can put a link to a blog post I wrote about it on its 40th anniversary, but just because they festival seating, which meant come and be served or whatever, like first come first served. I'm sorry, I was blanking on that term. And so all these people were like building up around the outside, and they heard a sound check and they thought the band was like already starting, and they just started to crush to get in. Like people like started falling down, being knocked over, people were like crushing them and walking on them, and people were still continuing to like merge forward. It was like a horrible like mob like disaster being like crushed. It was horrible. And that's the kind of thing I'm thinking about when I'm reading this so many years later. Like, how did this scenario even start spiraling like this when it's just like two like rednecks in the row in front of Nancy arguing with presumably only two other people, and then suddenly it's a giant brawl with like cops and everyone is fighting all around them. Like, what is going on? This woman's like mind, it was just so damn bizarre. Someone grabs her purse and she doesn't even care. None of the cops notice when she finally crawls away and tries to get their attention to tell them about her purse. All this police presence for just two rednecks trying to steal seats? Why doesn't Nancy return to her group? Why aren't they looking for her or even calling one another's names? No real teen of that era, especially not a girl, would be hunky-dory with a strange man coming out of nowhere, touching them, and taking them into the foyer. We had too many PSAs and very special episodes, as they were called, about stranger danger, not to mention all those after-school specials that were so popular back in my generation. Children are also taught, as I mentioned in a previous video, they should always find a woman for help, primarily, ideally, a mom with kids. And if you can't find a mother with kids, and find an older woman by herself, and then a younger woman, I guess even like an older teenage girl might help if none of those other types of women are around. And, if no women are around anywhere, you find a dad with kids because, he's going to be safe. You don't look for lone men, and decent lone men, they'll generally say, oh, okay, I'm going to help you, but I'm going to find a lady because, you might feel uncomfortable with a strange man, or there are certain things it's just not appropriate for me to help you with, things like that. And there's a saying, good men stand up, so bad men stand out. And it's definitely not saying, as MRAs insist, oh, you're saying all men are potential rapists and predators and child abusers. No, most men are not those things, thank God, but most rapists, child predators, etc. are men, and you have to understand those statements are saying two entirely different things. And so, pretty much any teenage girl with her wits about her who's been, Nancy is born in 1975, growing up in that era, would know, oh, you're not really supposed to be trusting strangers, particularly lone men. My mind, I have no words. This girl would have been raised in the era of stranger danger and very special episodes, and we're supposed to believe, oh, she immediately trusts a strange man because he helps her with her asthma attack, and oh, he's a hunk and he's so kind and generous, and oh, they have an immediate connection. That is not how any of this works. It's just, I'm totally calling BS on everything. Well, I call BS on everything in all of her books, but this particular scenario, it just boggles my mind in more than many other things. I would have been so terrified and desperately trying to get away in that situation. Instead of magically trusting the creepy stranger, he could have raped her on that very first day instead of waiting 10 whole days. And what's that all about? Most groomers don't spend that little time grooming the victim. It's on average 6 to 9 months before they make the first move, and by the time they start pushing for sexual things, usually, or whatever else they're grooming the victim for, they don't have to use force or threats or coercion or anything, because the victim just so completely trusts this guy and just goes away with whatever he tells her or him to do. That's why it's called grooming. And they also frequently groom the people around the intended victim. So this woman didn't understand anything about psychology or crime or anything at all. Why doesn't Nancy think to get back to her group? Why aren't they out looking for her? And after Collin drives Nancy home, what a shocker, it comes out that Aunt Pauline did alert the office and security officers and sat in the ticket office for hours. Already he's caught in his first lie, but Nancy doesn't notice. Accepting a ride from a stranger is an absolute no-go for all kids in the modern era, and probably always should have been a no-go, but many people were more trusting back in the day, and also hitchhiking was a lot more common too. And of course it did end in disaster, but people only heard, oh, everyone hitchhikes, so you're going to California from New York or vice versa or wherever because you're getting a new job or you're meeting relatives or friends. Oh, and you're just going to hitchhike, and people will be good and nice and noble and generous and trusting. They'll just, take you to the train station or the next stop or the city you're going to, and nothing bad will happen. But by the early 90s, people definitely knew you don't accept rides from strangers. And even if it doesn't end in a crime, that doesn't mean you need to meet again. Of course, Mommykins lectures her about it, and Nancy's like, oh, it's okay. Like, oh, parents think they know everything, but I know better than my mother. And then she completely changes her attitude. Oh, I was scared straight. Mommykins really does know everything. Oh, I will let Mommykins take over from now on and be the wise, all loving Mommykins and parental figure. Why does Nancy give her number to Collin? Why doesn't she tell her gaggle about it Monday at school if they're so close? Why does she have instalove for this dude? Like, what did he do to attract her besides, like, being handsome and helping her with her asthma attack? Instalove sucks regardless. Why does she agree to meet him alone at a park after school? And again, not telling anyone. Red flag bells should be going off when an adult man says 14 is his very favorite special age for his girls! Exclamation point. And Nancy thinks that's awesome. A 14-year-old from a non-dysfunctional home shouldn't even consider an alleged 18-year-old as a potential boyfriend. It later comes out he's 24, and I never understood why so many of my peers, or at least it seemed like so many of them, they were like, ooh, he's older and he likes me. I must be so mature. And while the guy is thinking, yay, a naive and experienced underage girl I get to prey on and take advantage of and like groom, and I can do whatever I want because she has no life experience or no relationship experience, and she won't know I'm asking her to do like moving way too fast in a sexual relationship or just doing other things any adult woman with more agency and experience with life and men would dare to put up with or even consider. More red flag bells should be going off when this dude has you called to the school office for a daisy and handwritten note in a box. Even couples in the pre-pill era who had to have shorter courtships by necessity didn't leap into serious relationships that lightning quick. Collin is so obviously giving her all sorts of sweet-talking lines designed to make her feel special, a time-trusted tactic of predators who know they have an easy target. And she's like talking about, oh, she's called to the office. Oh, what have I done? Does the whole school know about Collin? Did they think that we had ellipsis, that because he was 4 years older than me that he would just be after M dash? Because of course she's way too immature to write sex. Seriously, I wouldn't let myself think about it. It was too disgusting and degrading and un-Collin, again throwing shade on like premarital sex. I decided I wouldn't let them say one bad thing about him. I'd drop out of school and go to Arizona with my dad first. Miracle of miracles, the desk girl just handed me a plain brown paper wrapped bag, and there were hyphens between the words, like the brown paper wrapped, because of course, like everything is grammatically correct and hyphens are in all these pedantic places. That's totally how all 14-year-olds write. Shaking, I ran into the girls' room. That's the apostrophe is in the wrong place with girls. It should be after the S instead of before. I noticed a number of really embarrassing typos in this 2005 reprint. I don't know if they were in the original 1994 publication, so she runs into the bathroom to open it. At first I was scared because, like on television, I thought it might be something sinister or menacing, but it wasn't. Oh no, it wasn't at all. It was the most mag thing that had ever happened in all my life. Be still, my heart. A single white daisy lay in the bottom of the little box with a scribbled note. In celebration of the 3rd day anniversary of the most precious day in my life, your white knight. Each letter is capitalized. All of those words are capitalized. Your white knight. I hope. It wasn't signed. It didn't need to be. And here, in the first page, she's talking about how Collin creepily says, like, his girls, like, seriously. I hated to tell him that I was only 14, but he said he knew it anyway, because that's how old his sister is, and it's his very favorite special age for his girls. Imagine him calling me, all caps and italics, his girl, putting me in a category with his very own sister. Isn't that the mag and magnif of all magnificence? No one was using that slang word in the early 90s, like seriously. Oh, and then she says, oops, I finished the last 3 months of my diary in the last few days. Guess I'll just use my new loose leaf. Like, you do not have to be bound by like predated journals. That's why I don't use journals that, you can only write one page or one paragraph or 10 lines every day. Like many times I want to write so much more than that, or I need to write much more than that. And so anyway, he's just giving her all of these like stupid lines, and like she's feeling a little bit of red flags later on, but ignores it because, oh, Collin, sweet precious Collin, isn't like that. Another red flag when Collin calls twice, but hangs up when Mommykins answers. A man with honest intentions isn't afraid to talk to his girlfriend's parents. He later calls Nancy late at night to arrange another date after school, again at an isolated place, and she sees nothing creepy or suspicious or wrong with that. On this date, Collin rubs her back, arms, and legs uninvited, and Nancy still doesn't think it might be a good idea to throw the brakes on and get away from this handsy stranger she barely knows. Of course, he continues plying her with slick lines on this date, the type of things you'd expect in a Victorian love letter, and she talks about, oh, it felt so when he's like starting rubbing her back, which like how many 14-year-olds are like rubbing one another's backs on dates? They're like usually going to first base. Like I don't have to explain what that is, but they're not doing like back rubs. Like what century is this? It felt good, warm, relaxing, and belonging. I realized that I didn't get touched much by my mom anymore. She was so busy, again throwing shade on working mothers. But it was a different touch too. I felt happy little noises, almost like purring, splattering out of my mouth. That's a very specific, strange sex noise to be confessing to, Dr. Fraud, and you're welcome for me giving you that creepy image no one wanted. The sounds came out without my even trying to make them, and she later makes the purring noises when Lou is petting her hair at the movie when she wets herself and like runs into an alleyway with garbage cans. Collin laughed and rubbed my arms. It felt so good because Dr. Fraud loved to repeat words thrice for emphasis. When he got to my legs, I felt a little bit uncomfortable though. A strange little quivering shot through me, and I popped up suddenly. It embarrassed me, and I think it embarrassed him too. Ellipsis, but again, it probably didn't. He probably didn't feel what I felt at all. And she says, like, oh, I can't talk to anyone about him. Oh, I have to keep him a secret. But it's just so many just different, like, lazy tropes and gross oversimplifications. We can communicate mentally. I wanted him to call me, and he did call me. Oh, I hope he's not making a mistake and missing a day's school. I'm so worried he'll fall behind at university because he's on the dean's list and he's all honors and he has a precious little scholarship and all this other crap. And this other line he gives her on the next date: the sun shines brighter around you, the grass is greener, and my appetite is healthier. He got a mischievous look in his eye. So let's dash off and get a hot dog on the other side of the pond. Oh, seriously, this is just such obvious, like, unrealistic crap. By next Monday, Nancy is already ditching school to have an isolated date with Collin, who picks her up by the bus stop 15 minutes after the bus leaves. On this date, they racistly give themselves funny pretend Native American names. Like, Collin calls her Princess Mud on Nose and Toes, and she calls him Great White Paddler, and they explore their alleged sovereignty, a little island on a bayou. Nan call. That's like the 1950s call. They want their casual anti-Native American racism back. You know, Collin was totally preparing to rape her on this little island on a bayou, since he was about to put down a blow-up mattress. So I wondered what he intended to use for that. He only was stopped because a swarm of gnats and mosquitoes attacked, and she, like, again, writing like no 14-year-old, what a wonderful day. I am sure it is one of the most perfect days that our Creator ever created. I spread our breakfast out on our special place. Collin had to go back to the car for something, probably the blow-up mattress, I think. And as I watched him turn up the little jogging path, coming back towards me, my heart leapt like a wild bird trapped in a too small cage. What 14-year-old expresses herself like that unless she's deliberately writing for publication or an English teacher? For the first time, I raced towards his outstretched arms and hugged him tightly, unembarrassingly. I had put his Daisy in my hair. My Daisy, my Nancy, he whispered faintly, italics. We were family. And that's yet another Mormon reference with their little cult mantra, families are forever. And that's even on Dr. Fraud's gravestone. And then Collin invites himself over to make dinner when Mommykins is out of town because Nancy trustingly tells him everything. Nancy lies to Elle, who she's supposed to be having a sleepover with and who's like supposedly her best friend out of the gaggle, that she has cramps. She sees nothing creepy about Collin giving her alcohol, nothing dangerous about locking all the doors with a strange man in the apartment. Of course, Sparks wanted to portray Nancy as a naive victim, vulnerable to being taken advantage of because her parents are divorced and Mommykins is away working so much. She couldn't dare to portray Nancy as a normal 90s teen, and she is talking on the phone with Elle's mother. Oh, I know you're alone, Nancy, so you must promise me to lock all the doors so you'll like totally be safer. After a while, he lit a fire in our little fireplace. Oh, wow, most apartments don't have fireplaces. And oops, I remembered I was supposed to spend the night with Elle. Scared to death that her mom might drop by to pick me up before I could call her, I dialed the phone frantically. What would she think if she dropped in? Oh, I wonder. And she might. She had a key for emergencies. It seemed like the phone rang 100 times before anyone answered, but she finally did. I told her I had real bad cramps and I wanted to sleep in my own bed. At first she seemed unsure. Then she made me promise to go put the night latches on both doors, and she waited on the phone for me to do it. It was funny, Collin and I giggling quietly as we tiptoed to each door and bolted it. Finally, Mrs. Warner wished me good night and hung up, and Collin and I crumpled on the floor in fits of laughter, again with the being thigh-slapping hardy-har-har hilarity over the things that aren't even funny, like Mormons really don't have fun if this is their height of amusement. Her relationship with Collin unrolls at lightning speed and crashes to an end just as swiftly. It's hard to go along with any of it. There's no slow, believable, realistic development, and Nancy never has any skepticism about his intentions or if she's ready for any relationship. Beatrice Sparks, you suck. You were an awful writer as well as a terrible human. Thank you very much for watching. Please leave a comment letting me know, have you read any of this fraud's books, like this one or her other ones? I know her most famous two are Go Ask Alice and Jay's Journal. Have you read Rick Emerson's recent book, Unmask Alice, with so many more new, shocking, unearthed details about this absolute fraud and the horrible things she got away with for decades? Your experience with literary frauds in general. I have a whole bunch more of videos coming up in this series, as well as I will do some variety and review a couple other of Sparks' books to put in my playlist. Beatrice Sparks was a vile fraud, and thank you guys again very much for watching, and I will see you very soon. Bye.